Welcome to Two Dads Talking, a special edition tonight where I will be shushing Doug in favor of our special guest.
We don't
Big
know
Lux.
that yet.
Oh, we do. Tonight we're revisiting an episode that we had previously recorded and released, What is a Woman Answered? We've got with us a very special guest, a friend of mine, a very talented professional musician and entertainer. He's also a social activist and I guess I can technically say a politician. He's on a town council, so I guess he's a politician too, even though there's a negative connotation with that word most of the time when it comes out of my mouth. But he's one of the good ones, and he's a good friend of mine, and he disagrees with me on some things, and so it should make for good conversation. But Big Lux, welcome to the show, and why don't you kind of say who you are in your own words instead of having me kind of shoebox you?
I mean, it's all good. It's hard to put me in a box, brother. Number one, I appreciate you for having me on. You know, obviously we go way back to the days of middle school and hanging out in our hometown of Westerly, Rhode Island. And then both of us really joining the military right after high school, and then really kind of chasing each other around the world a little bit. You know, I went to West Point, and Tom enlisted right after high school, so he got into it before I did. He was over in Iraq while I was still in school, and then I graduated in 2004. My first duty station was Germany. You know, Tom was already over there, and so it was dope. We got to spend many a good night out in Frankfurt, and really got into some things. We got hijinks.
We did. I was telling Doug we drank a lot of rhino piss together.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if he believed me when I said it, but that was a true statement.
The rhino piss was real.
I absolutely believe you drink rhino piss.
I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what was in that shot. It was like a bar called the Kyalami. It was like African themed bar in the middle of Germany.
The Sachsenhausen district in Frankfurt, I think, right?
Yeah, in Sachsenhausen, Germany. Oh, Sachsenhausen, Frankfurt. Thank you. Is the party district, and it was like yellow. It tasted foul. It smelled foul, and when you drank it, they give you a button. It says, "I got rhino pissed."
Like a badge of honor.
It was.
Is it better or worse than a straight shot of bitters? That's my like metric. It sounds like it's worse, at least by.
I remember thinking it was like kerosene.
Oh, okay.
Like it tasted like something you should light on fire.
Like cherry flavored kerosene or just regular kerosene?
Not even cherry, no. Like piss flavored kerosene. I think what happened was whenever they got down to like the dregs of a bottle, then they didn't want to throw it out, but it wasn't to serve. I think they poured it in a bucket, and then that's what they served. I think that's what this was. It was all the dregs. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. It was wild, and that is just scratching the surface of the kinds of people that we met, the kind of the circumstances we got into, the freestyle rapping in monasteries, in bars, in walking down the
streets of Hannah.
It was good times. And we did a lot of that, and of course Bridget was over there for a lot of that as well, and so it's great to have some folks from home to hang out with, and then we got to follow each other back to the States. I mean, he visited me stateside when I was in Georgia, when I was at airborne school. What else did we do out there? Oh yeah, and then we were both in Virginia at the same time too. Yeah. So Virginia was my last duty station, and he was already out at the time and working as a law enforcement officer. I was working at a combat lab acquisition unit where we were just trying to do crazy things to get crazy new equipment. I was equipping counter drone systems in Afghanistan. That's like one of my last duties, and so I was stationed in Fort Belvoir, just south of Washington D.C., and so it was like a 4-hour drive or something down to where you were at.
Yeah, I think a little less, but close. Yeah,
something like that. And so like there was a few weekends I made the trip, and it was dope. And then when I came back after I got out of the Army, I went to grad school, University of Miami, to real estate, finance, blah blah blah. But I kept playing violin, this kind of thing I did, and then I came back to Rhode Island after that experience because I was like, I have an opportunity to play violin full time. Never thought it was something that I was ever going to do. I was like, I was going to be an Army officer, or I was going to go into business, or I was going to do whatever. And came back, and Tom happened to be running Scribe, and he was a marketing guru. And I was like, you know what? I can play a little bit. I don't really have a lot of gigs. I don't really have a big name or anything like that, but I think we could probably do something out here. So we teamed up and we started this project, the Big Lux project. And 4 years later, it's past what we thought, what we expected. So now I'm regional. I get some international gigs. I do a lot of corporate and, full-time musician. And so since I've been back, I've also gotten to a little bit of activism. During the pandemic, of course, I had a lot of time on my hands. I wasn't really playing. And that activism for social justice kind of rolled into politics, and I decided to do that. So that's, I guess, the short version of Big Lux and my story. I like what y'all are doing out here, especially the storytelling aspect of this, of the podcast. And we all get I think my favorite episode probably so far is when you brought in, I think, your former supervisor. So and y'all just telling cop stories, I think.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't have more embarrassing ones ready to fire off on me. He had the one that was a little embarrassing, but I thought he was going to come ready. I thought he had a whole bunch of them he was going to shoot off to make me blush.
No, he was probably being gentle. Nice.
He was chill about it. He was really chill about it. He was slick. I was surprised that if he had never done something like this before, because he just kind of came in with the story. They just rolled off him. Everything was okay, it's got a
That's the thing about police officers, man. They rack up stories so fast. It becomes easy to tell stories. Every police officer is probably either a storyteller or just so traumatized that he's an introvert. It's one of those two things, because you see all that stuff. You see things most people won't believe, and it's just, you got to get it out. So you used to telling stories pretty quick.
Yeah.
So what brought us all together for this tonight with the special guest appearance, and the first guest appearance we've had that wasn't a dad, by the way. I got to say, this is the first one of those.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah, you're the first non-dad to make a special guest appearance. So there's a couple of people who've been begging me to be on. They're going to be mad at me for this, so that's okay. What brought this up was the "What is a Woman" episode that we did with the extremely polarizing title. Big Lux and I had a talk about that episode, and he brought up some interesting points, and I don't want to go ahead and kind of paraphrase them. I don't want to put words in his mouth in case I get something wrong. But what I took away from it was that, it wasn't, the conversation didn't include all sides and didn't include all parties, and there should be a voice in there to talk about some other things. And he just kind of wanted to pop on and talk. And, we believe in conversations as much as Doug and I politely disagree with one another. By now, everyone probably knows that we believe in conversations. But this all kind of stemmed from that episode. And, yeah, I'm glad that we're having sort of our first, I'll call it a follow-up, but I don't want to call it a part 2, because I know we're talking about some different stuff. We're not, sticking to that episode's parameters, but it's kind of neat to have an episode.
It feels like a remix or something.
Yeah, there you go. This is the remix. Yeah.
Hey, before we get into this too, what do you, since I'm the new guy here for you, what do you prefer I call you? Lux?
Yeah, I mean, Big Lux, Lux.
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
cool.
just whatever. Just do you have a preference? So I don't want to be like you guy over there on the right.
You're gonna drop the actual first name, the government name, and
Tom's friend.
No, I get it. It's a good question, and it's actually really funny that there's a lot of people out there who do not accept when I tell them that I'm gonna be Big Lux, especially when I'm out and I'm performing, and a stranger comes up to me and be like, "Hey, what's your name?" I'll be like, "I'm Big Lux," and they'll be, "No, what's your real name?" I'll be like, "That's not a good start," and and I see, especially women get super defensive real quick, and I'll be like, "Okay, I see what was happening," but you're also not gonna get it. If you're really interested, you can find out. When I'm up here, I'm Big Lux. You're not going to get anything from me. Sorry. And it makes me feel good. I get to choose. We all get to choose our identities. And I feel like that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. So I think that's a great transition.
That's a great segue.
That is a good segue.
All right. So lead us in.
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, I just want to kind of frame this and, what I want to try to do today with this topic, because, yeah, I did when I saw the topic of, what is a woman answered, and I was like, okay, this is obviously a hugely provocative subject. Let's see. I'm gonna try to hold judgment and just see what happens. And I listened, and I had played it for a couple of people close to me too, and I know, like, Tom especially, because we go back so far, and I know he's got a good heart. He's a great dude, and we do have some disagreements, but I honestly, I just thought that there was not that there just it was very clear to me that there just was not consideration for the other side of the argument in a real human way. Like, I know there was a couple, you definitely made some references to the fact that, transgender people are, deserving of respect, and they're going through something. And there was definitely some comments of that. So there was not nothing, for sure. But you all really, really, I think, did a good job of, humanizing your points in the way that you thought that the issue affected you and your families. And the thing about this issue is that it doesn't affect us the same way it affects women and transgendered people. Like, we're just not in it. We're just not in it the way that they are. And so I just want to kind of bring a little bit of that humanity to that side of it, and to try to consider some of those angles. I know that a lot of times in these conversations, people get really twisted up about winning or proving an absolute moral right. And, like, that's not what I'm trying to do here. Like, all the kind of social justice work that I've done and any gains that I've made, it's by building relationships with the people that I'm around. Like, you have to everybody recognizes everybody else's humanity, and the fact that we all have different points of view and we all have different experiences. And if we can take that as a starting point and have conversation, seems like something we're going to be able to do here. So I'm excited to be able to do that with you all. And I hope we can, end up, like, all kind of getting something out of it. So I just want to kind of lay that out as the groundwork. So I will say that the title itself and the fact that you took on this subject, I will applaud you all for. First of all, I will applaud you for trying to take on this subject. This is an important subject that that in our time, and it's complicated. People got thoughts. I will say that if you're going to take on, like, if you're going to choose the 5 most difficult topics to discuss in a public forum, this is going to be one of them. I mean, I'm talking about, like, race, gender, religion. I mean, like, I don't even know what the 5th one is, but, like, any one of those topics, no matter, as soon as you say that you're going to approach them, I think it just takes, like, a different level of scrutiny, research, responsibility in handling it, because it's going to raise feelings on every side, because there are people who have so much invested in these topics. And the reason why people have so much invested is because there's been a ton of harm done to people in the past. That's why it's difficult. It's not difficult to talk about race because we think we, like, look different, or because of what is happening in the world right now. It's difficult to talk about race because of what's happened in the history of this country in the last, 200 years. The same thing is true about women and transgender rights. I would say that there's probably even been more movement. There's been more change in those topics and women and transgender rights than there has been in race in the last 5 or 10 years. But there's been a history in this country of violence towards transgender people, of harassment, of othering, of abuse. And it's been a really difficult road for a lot of people who are on that path. And, some people could say that it is a choice and it's their own doing, but I personally do not believe that it is a choice. Like, they are the way that they are. And so we have to figure out how to live in a world where we respect them for who they are and allow them to have their freedoms. And so, yeah, the episode title was a sticking point for me. And I was like, ooh, man, if they're doing this, I really hope that it's something that is balanced and really well researched, because if not, people are going to be coming for them. Even if it is, people are going to be coming for them. Like, let's be real. We know that. But if it's not, that's going to be tough. And the format of the show, y'all do, I love it. It's conversational. It's not super research intensive. You all have opinions about how the world looks like to you, and it's entertaining and it's engaging, I think, for a lot of people who do think like you. But for the people who don't think like you, they might feel that real damage could be done if a certain topic isn't researched in a way that they think is comprehensive,
So I think what I just heard is that Big Lux wants us to call this episode "What is a Woman?" Answered Again by Big Lux. Right? That's the title that he just suggested.
And also Tom and Doug were buttheads.
Yeah, maybe Tom and Doug were buttheads, but I think Big Lux answers "What is a woman?" I think that's how we'll go with this one.
So all that hate mail is gonna just go right.
Yeah, we'll pin his email, his DM, all of his socials. We'll pin all that in the show notes. So you guys can just reach out to him directly after we edit his words to sound, hateful and mean, get us off the hook.
No, Tomas will kick you off first.
Yeah, he would.
Fair, dude.
But for real, I am really curious on your take. If you're going to dive into controversial subjects like this in the future, how would you feel about whether you want to continue like this format? Does this format work for that kind of subject? Would you want to do like a slightly deeper dive into it? Because I think there was just like a lot of meat left on the bone with this first conversation. If you're trying to say like we comprehensively have answered one of society's most difficult questions while citing one source comprehensively. So I don't know.
I can address that. First of all, for the title, I think it was pretty clearly a marketing. It's pretty clearly what that was. Anyone who saw that and thought that two middle-aged cis white married men actually answered this question definitively in any way that would include a mic drop didn't understand what we were doing there. So I think that one's probably an easy, these guys are being satirical to get clicks kind of title.
Well, and like Tom said too, he got more hate emails than downloads.
Yes.
So it was like, well, I know that people were just going after the title alone, nothing else. So
yeah, I had over 100 messages before that episode had 75 downloads. So something didn't add up there. Like some people were messaging before they listened to it. But yes, the title was obviously generated to kind of get a chuckle and draw some interest. It wasn't meant to summarize the way it actually filled it up. As far as kind of what you said there with your opening and kind of all those words, I don't think there's anything you said that I disagree with. I really don't. There are some things where some more nuance, maybe we talk a little more, but there's nothing you said I disagree with. And I think that as far as the format goes, this show is not meant to be, this isn't like, I guess I'll use Time Suck because I know Doug has listened to it, and I feel like we've talked about it, and you've listened to Time Suck, or am I mistaken that maybe you haven't? So Time Suck is a comedian named Dan Cummings, and he does like 2-hour podcast episodes where they pick one topic nominated by his listeners, and he hires research aides, and they go really deep on this thing. And he gives a timeline of events, and he gives his position, and it's very, very deep. That's really not what our format is. What we do is, we're talking about subjects. A lot of times it's totally spontaneous and off the cuff. We kick this thing off some nights recording, and we don't know what we're going to talk about until we start recording. And then you can tell those episodes where there's a little less structure and we kind of go down the rabbit hole. They're fairly apparent, I guess. For a dad joke. But this format, everything we talk about, for the most part, we're talking about it from a parenting perspective and from our experience. And I think if people understand that we're addressing these things from our experiences as a parent, and in some cases we're telling experiences and sharing experiences before we were parents, that they're going to realize that, ours is not meant to be an all-inclusive argument for or against anything. And I hope people realize that when we talk about anything, we're talking about how we see it through our filters. In the episode that released today, we had very different filters about how we view morality and religion, and it's very apparent that, you know, everything is based on how we see things individually. So what I would say about it is, in episodes like that are huge topics that are going to generate a lot of controversy and as you put, leave a lot of meat on the bone, I think that the format works in that case as long as we're always open to go back to the dinner table and invite people who want to pick some more meat off the bone and talk about it. I am always happy if we get listener engagement or somebody comes at us and says, hey, I want to talk about this. Anybody who wants to have a conversation about one of our episodes, they can contribute to it, give us different experience, give us better info. And I can only speak for me, but I have a feeling Doug will agree. I'm always happy to do what we're doing tonight and have someone on the show and further that context and that conversation. Doug's a philosopher. He may not win a lot of arguments with me because he's just never right, but he's a philosopher and he thinks I like his thought process about things. And I don't think he'll disagree that more information is better, more perspective is better, and that we can have conversations with people and have the same format discussion without going super deep into research and still develop, you know, meaningful context and meaningful conversations with people and come up with something that's, you know, worth having, a conversation that's worth having. At the end of the day, that's all our podcast is. It's really more like two dads sitting at a bar after work, kind of talking about whatever because they need to just purge and get stuff out of their system, than it is ever meant to be an all encapsulating judgment or you know, a mic drop on any topic. That's all my word salad, I guess. Doug, your thoughts?
If I disagree with you, will you shush me again?
No, I'll let you talk.
Lux is like, yeah, like shaking his head. No, I mean, I agree. I'm not, but like I said before, I think right before we recorded, I can already be kind of a butthead on a lot of things just because of the way I'm wired. And if I was unwilling to, you know, have someone else bring some more of that meat off that bone and say, no, let's talk about this some more, like I would be just a bigger butthead if I wasn't open to that. And I mean, for me, a topic like this, I'm more Irish than anything else, so I just love a good argument. I love a good fight. I've always kind of had that edge in me and it's not even about winning or losing. Sometimes it's just, yeah, this is fun. I just like getting into it and just going back and forth. And topics like this, I mean, honestly, I like our format, but Lux does have a point about bringing at least a little bit more in. Like we were just shading our own perspectives and feelings, and even just a little bit of like, hey, this demographic is, you know, 3.4% of the population in the Midwest or something, like just even a little bit to say like the size of the pie we're talking about. Even just that might even help us a little bit along the way too. So I think, like most things, the answer is somewhere in the middle. He's basically coming on and telling us, hey, guys, your format could have been a little bit better. So it's our job to say, okay, well, we should at least add in a little bit of that. So I think in a way, you're both right. For me, at least, I would have to be careful about what data I'm picking, because if I just get rolling on something, Tom will be telling me exactly why I'm saying it wrong. So
yeah, no. And I'm saying, like, for most topics, I think, like I say, like your format is great and it's fine. I just think there's certain things you talk about where harm is possible, you know. And I don't even really think that I'm 100% the best person to be on this podcast talking about this subject, because, you know, I'm an ally. I consider myself an ally to the LGBTQ community, but you know, I'm not in it, you know. And when me and Tom first talked about this, I was like, okay, let me reach out to some people and see, you know, who is going to bring more personal experience to bear. Because I think that's always you know, it's not the be all and end all of every conversation, but it always provides really good perspective. And so I reached out to the transgender network of Rhode Island, and here's the email that they sent back to me and said, well, I so appreciate your interest in supporting our community and engaging in this dialogue. It sounds like the work of an ally. It does not sound like the kind of experience that would be safe for trans community members. If we can provide any useful resources to support you, please let us know, but we are not interested in participating. There is, so when you are basically kind of putting somebody's lifestyle on trial, as it were, and they have to kind of defend all of the decisions that they've made in their lifetime, uh it doesn't feel safe, when you uh, I'll say just one of the really striking things about the original podcast was, Doug, when you were talking about, hey, if there's a man in a dress, going into the bathroom and after one of my daughters, you best believe I'm gonna go in there and yank him out and do some damage on him. And you know, a lot of people will interpret that as a threat to somebody who is transgendered and happens to be in that bathroom at that time. 99.99% of the time that person is not thinking about anything else than going to the bathroom. And honestly, that trans person probably has a little bit of anxiety about which bathroom to use, because if you are somebody that presents or has like masculine features and is wearing a dress, I mean, by that point you might be transitioning, you might not. Like what happens if you go to the men's room? How is that is that treated? There's trans people are making these decisions. There's this crazy statistic where trans people have like a super high urinary tract infection percentage because a lot of them just don't go to the bathroom because they are just terrified of being, getting into the kind of altercation in the situation that you described in that first podcast. And so like, I think we have an opportunity to potentially make a safer situation for people who are transgendered, by really letting them kind of tell their stories and understanding how the judgments that we as cisgendered people put on them, how it affects them, because I feel like it affects them much more than it affects us, and that's kind of another reason why that's why the title is provocative. What is a woman? By two dads talking. People who have way more to lose and way more skin in the game. I feel like need to have their stories told and need to be protected, because trans community they are subjects of a lot of violence. So,
first of all, I would just like to make clear I did not say I would go in, drag them out, and say I'll do damage to you. I did not say that. My exact phrasing was, you can wait. And while that is aggressive and that is confrontational, that's, in my mind, that's not violent. Telling someone they can wait until my daughter's done, to me, is not violent. Violence is like, if you go in there, I'm going to punch you in the face. That is a threat. That is actual like physical threat. And to me, that's different than I'm one step below, where I'm implying that this could escalate to something physical, but I'm not actually bringing it there yet. That's just, again, for actual pure language. I understand why that phrasing gets interpreted right to the violence card, because if there is any pushback, I'm likely to go to that next point. So point taken on that, but I do want to make it clear I didn't just say, oh, I'm just going to hurt you right away. And then try to keep it all straight in my head here. Yes, it affects transgender people way more than it affects the rest of us, just purely by a numbers game. I am not privy to the most recent numbers for what percentage of the population is transgender. Isn't it like 2.7 or 3.2 or something overall for like the grand total of everybody, at least in the US? I feel like the last number I saw was 2.7, but that could be an old number for
every time I've tried to look up a number, it's so kind of come with a caveat that it's all based on the number of people who are willing to talk about it and willing to report it, and that number is probably not accurate.
If 97% of us are walking around here, we're not going to run into the other 2% all the time, every time. Like it just the numbers don't work out. So point taken on that too. To me, though, putting aside the transgender thing for a second, just not keying in on that specifically, if any man, dress or no, starts walking into the women's bathroom when my daughter is in there, I'm having the exact same reaction. in a way, I might even go straight to the violent reaction. And I think that's what got lost in this. So in what I said, man in a dress, through my eyes, man in a dress is going into the women's bathroom following my daughter. And I'm like, no, you can wait. I'm saying you can wait because you might actually identify as a woman. And so I am, believe it or not, giving a small bit of respect to that viewpoint. If you're just like me, like some dude who's just going in, I might be throwing you on the ground right away and saying, fuck out of there. Like I'm assuming that you are not identifying as someone that should use that bathroom. You're just going in to be creepy. So my reaction would actually be, in my mind, potentially worse for someone who maybe doesn't identify that way. But at the end of the day, we're talking about respecting views, and my view is that someone is following my daughter into the bathroom, and as a father, I have a right to protect that. In a way, I don't really give a crap who you are. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You're someone who's potentially threatening to my daughter. It's nothing against any particular demographic or community. It's just me protecting my daughter. And woman, man, whatever. If I think you're a threat, I'm going to treat you that way. So it's not meant to be a particular disrespect in that sense. That's really where I was coming from with that. And final point too, I have tried to say this before. At the end of the day, we're all human, and while I can be abrasive, I still basically view everybody that way. At some level, we're all human. We all deserve some level of respect simply for that. It takes a particularly heinous act or series of actions or personality or whatever to sort of lose that respect for me personally. But why does the solution have to be that we, just share the same two bathrooms? Why can't we have the third, what do they call it, non-binary or gender neutral or whatever family bathroom? Like why can't we just, I mean, let me qualify this by saying I realize you can't just say men, women, everybody else, because that's kind of almost condescending and just like othering anybody else. But why can't we just have our cake and eat it too? Why can't we say, okay, you want a space that's more private where you feel safe? Here is your own space. Like, to me, why is that such a problem? Then we don't have to have this discussion, and we can all, and anybody who wants to rock the boat at this point, when we all theoretically have our designated quote safe space, now we can actually find the true a-holes who are just there to actually push people back. So that's more or less my pieced response to each of that was, yes, it was aggressive, but it wasn't actually really meant to be towards any trans person. It was just how I would react to anybody following my daughter into a bathroom. And also, why can't there just be a different solution that we're all happy with? Why does it have to be this bathroom or this bathroom that we already have? Why does it have to be one of the two categories we already have? We've already talked about how people have different associations and genders and identifications. If I'm different from other people, I want something that's more for me. I don't want to shoehorn myself into one of those two categories if I'm not one of those two categories. Does that make sense at all? Or am I just...
Oh no!
Am I further down in my hole?
I'm a big fan of gender neutral. I like places that either have like individual gender neutral bathrooms, like with separate doors. Like that's I think obviously the gold standard. But then you also you do have places who and I think that's crazy. The show Ally McBeal. I just remember seeing that when I was a kid, and it was like the first like gender neutral bathroom. This law firm had a gender neutral bathroom, like of everybody just stalls, locked doors, and then everybody would be out there with the sinks. And I was like, oh, is this a thing that could happen? Can like men and women use the same bathroom? Is that like interesting? So it's been in media. It's been an idea that's been out there. I see it. One of the venues that I play at, Foxwoods, Novell, they have a gender neutral bathroom like that, and so I think it's
Mohegan Sun, right?
Mohegan Sun. Thank you. Yeah,
we'll make sure we're giving credit to the right amazing venue.
You're right. The right amazing video that hasn't booked me in the last year, but like we're not going to talk about that.
We do. Again, reach out.
So I'm agreeing with you on that point for sure, Doug.
I think at the end of that, I took a whole bunch of notes in there. At the end of that, you hit on, I think, what's quite possibly the crux of the matter. When you said, why can't we all, go to our safe spaces. I think that's a big part of the problem, is that this is an entire community of people, however small it may be compared to community as a whole. It's a community of people that doesn't have a safe space yet in a lot of ways. I think that's a big part of the issue here, is that it's easy for us to say we go to our safe spaces, but this is a group of people that doesn't necessarily always have a safe space. And that's, I'm assuming, part of why they said they felt they didn't feel safe in joining it in the email they sent you, Lux. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way as I heard it being read. Like, I don't know why you feel like a podcast with us isn't a safe space, but again, it's not for me to say what makes someone feel safe or doesn't. But maybe it's a lack of safe spaces that makes someone feel sort of that way and is predispositioned toward that. Infrastructure wise, a lot of places, buildings have been built for 100 years, 80 years. They're not going to have more than 2 bathrooms. So just adding a 3rd bathroom may not be an option. So I agree. The gold standard is to have multiple restrooms, one of which is going to act as a gender neutral restroom. I like that idea. I will side with Doug in one aspect, and that's, and this is something, again, I'm speaking through my own filter. If I see any man walk into a bathroom behind my 8-year-old daughter, I'm immediately going to be defensive. And it doesn't matter if he's wearing a dress or if he's wearing an Aerosmith jacket with blue jeans, or if, he's got a woman draped over his shoulder and they're just drunk and he's clearly just having, there's a weird switch that flips once you become a parent. And you really do see the entire world as everything is a danger to my child. Everything. It's the mailman in the driveway. It's the car that's driving 5 miles below the speed limit down the road. It's the squirrel chittering in the yard that I think is staring at my 3-year-old that might run up and bite her and give her rabies. Like,
we had a big hawk on our fence and we looked at our 9-month-old like, let's just stand next to him real quick. It's just like, it's gonna take him.
We dealt with that with coyotes out here when we first moved back up north. It's really hard to explain, but I mean, literally, you have a bias that kicks in when you have kids, and that bias is to defend them against absolutely everything, even things that aren't a threat. And it's everything kind of becomes a threat. And I think that's a filter that Doug's probably talking through when he says, if a guy walks in that bathroom, I'm going to tell him to wait, because that's one place where I feel the same way. If my oldest walks into a restroom and some guy walks in behind her, and again, I don't care what he's presenting as or what he's dressed as. If a guy walks into a restroom behind my daughter, I'm immediately on edge. And a part of that is my background. I mean, I've seen the worst parts of people, and I've seen and dealt with the worst parts of society. I accidentally stumbled upon the biggest child porn distributor in all of Newport News' history when I was a police officer. Like, we busted the guy and it became a federal case, and literally discovered him completely by accident during a welfare check, like freak chance. And the guy had hundreds of thousands of kiddie porn images and was stalking some girl who was playing middle school volleyball at the time. So when I see something like that, I've already got those seeds planted in me where I know what people are capable of in the wrong way. And that parenting filter, the best way I can describe it is it's defensive, and it's defensive paranoia in a lot of ways. So I think that kind of shades the response, at least from my perspective, a little bit too. And then I also want to say that my first experience, that I think it was my first experience with someone in the trans community. I guess I don't really know for sure, but when I was in Savannah, Georgia at 19 years old, I was in a pool. I was in a bar shooting pool, and I went up to use a restroom. And the restroom there was up on the 2nd floor, which I always thought was kind of an awkward place to have your restroom if you were a bar. The bar was on the 1st floor, and then you had to go upstairs to use the restrooms. And I'm there at the urinal, and I'm giving back the Corona that I had borrowed all night long at the bar. And the gentleman walks up to the urinal next to me, and I hear this big, long sigh. Oh, that's the stuff. And I look over, and it's like a 6'3" guy in a dress. And I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. And I said something like that out loud, and he laughed, and he was like, you're not from around here, huh? I was like, no. He goes, you're an Army boy? I said, yeah. He goes, welcome to Savannah, man. I was like, yeah, cool. And we had a good laugh about it, and we joked, and it wasn't an issue. Like, it didn't matter to me. It was a funny story, and I love to tell it. Like, it cracks me up, makes me smile still thinking about it.
Yeah, however, but you had no idea what you were dealing with, like what was actually happening at the time.
But I don't care. Again, unless someone's doing something to make my space unsafe, or to do something that needs to be dealt with in a negative way, I don't care. Everyone's free to do their own thing as long as it's not impacting me in a bad way or those around me. But when you become a parent, you really do automatically assume that everyone that approaches your child has that potential. And it's probably an irrational paranoia in 99% of the cases, but you can't ever afford to let that 1% go. It's kind of how you feel as a parent, you know? It's an irrational paranoia, but it's one that I embrace anyway. It's really hard to explain better than that. I wish I had better words for it. But
I was going to say,
I'm
glad you said paranoia, because I did want to tack on like one thought that I thought might help with describing where I'm coming from. Before I had kids, you know, if I thought, you know, just even going to a men's restroom, just me, and someone else walks in, I kind of at least, you know, just look to see if there's any reason to be concerned about this person. Now, being a parent, if someone comes into a men's restroom where I'm already there, and like even, you know, my wife is with the kids, like, you know, out in like whatever, the restaurant or the mall or whatever like that, I have this weird thought like, what if this guy saw my kids, decided he wants to take one of them, and he's following me into the bathroom to try to get the jump on me so that I'm removed from the equation so that he can try to overpower my wife and take one of my kids? Like, I have this thought. And so I'm like peeing standing sideways just to like block myself just in case he tries to do something like ninja assassin style on me. And so it's just, it's paranoia, and you think these things that are completely unreasonable, but like it's there now. You just, any possible thing can be a threat to your kids now, and it does get absurd. But that's the lens we're coming through. We're not just sitting here thinking, oh, those darn others, and that's it. So that's, you know, just I've had that thought, and I've been like, I'm a fucking crazy person.
And I appreciate that perspective. I'm not a dad. I will not know. I'm, you know,
that you know of.
That I know of. And at one point I may discover
civil gents.
But it just, the one thing that, as both of you are speaking, that strikes me is that like that fear that driving that paranoia is mostly driven by men. It's not driven by transgender people. And you said it like specifically, like the threats is not coming from transgender. So I think it would have been very, very healthy to separate those two thoughts, and they're kind of getting conflated. And I think it's really easy for a listener to hear that and get those two things to really be clear.
Can I be incendiary? Honestly, I don't separate those two things. I don't. But it's not an othering. It's not an aggression. It's just, if there are 100 people in the world who are a threat to my kids and 2 of them are transgender, then that represents 2% of the threat to my kids. It has nothing to do with you being transgender. It's just what it happens to be. I'm not separating them. I'm not saying that they're not a threat. I'm saying whatever percentage of the population they're that percentage of a threat to me or my family. That's it. So I realize that comes off as judgy probably somehow, but that's what I mean. I'm not separating anybody. I'm just saying, here are the potential threats to my family, and I don't give a shit what you identify as or not. It's to me, are you a threat or not? That's it.
Well, I think that's part of what Lux is saying, is that it's not that you're considering them a threat because they're transgender.
No,
you're considering everyone a threat. But what he's saying, and if I get this wrong, Lux, let me know.
Is that what you're saying? Then I did misinterpret it. I am sorry.
I think what he's saying is that what we're really saying is everybody's a threat, and the way it came off is some people are going to hear what we have said as transgender people are a threat, and that's not what we're saying. We're saying it's everyone, regardless of orientation or association or. Lux, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to put words in your mouth.
I think straight men are a way bigger threat to me and my daughters than anybody else. Honestly.
Father Christopher and Catholic priests are my chief concern still. Like, I'm scarred for life still, as I've mentioned in the stand-up routine. Sorry, Lux, go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm glad that those words just came out of your mouth. It's like, you know, like men.
Mine or Doug's?
I think yours.
Okay.
Hey.
You know, that men are like a much greater threat than transgender. There's no additional threat because people are transgendered, and that's the thing that we're trying to that's what I would like to get across to people. In fact, I would say that transgender people are much less likely. You're more likely to get assaulted by a member of Congress in a bathroom than you are by a transgender person. Like,
especially in an airport. Yeah.
Straight up, like the numbers.
Well, that's consensual in airports. I thought that's what I heard.
It's just yeah, they're trying to live their lives, and so I think we can, if you all don't mind, I think we can move on from
Yeah.
from that, because there's and one of the things that you all brought up of the paranoia and the intense desire to defend your family. It's one of the things I want to transition to, is like why I think it would be absolutely amazing to have a father of a transgendered person on the show. I think that is the right person to be, because they would be able to talk about having that same irrational fear of all of the things that could harm their child, that you all are kind of talking about in reverse. And the fear of suicide, the fear of terrible outcomes, the fear of bullying, the fear of what happens if like my child never finds happiness because they never can like figure out who they are, what happens if society never accepts them, all those fears that you all are having for your families and your children, the families of transgender children are having. They're wondering, they're like, is hormone blockers, is it going to prevent suicide? Is it going to be necessary, or is it going to be something that's going to prevent, they're asking the same questions I think that maybe you all are asking, but they have, the stakes for them are just so obviously so much higher, and they're taking advice from the medical community, the American Medical Association, all the medical associations who have done this research and said that, gender affirming care is life saving for a large percentage of the trans community. And I think that those parents are living with a much greater fear of a lot more different things, and trying to figure out and sort through all of this information. Is my child going to be able to play sports? Are they going to be able to do, are they going to be able to go to the bathroom? Are they going to be able to, are they going to have somebody who's angry just sitting outside, who doesn't have a bathroom door, that doesn't understand? Like, there's going to be so much more. And I think that is a conversation that I think would be really compelling, much more compelling than just me flapping my gums, because I'm going to try to have empathy for everybody, but it's not my lived experience as well.
I think I would love to have someone on like that, because I envisioned I would have a lot more to be worried about in that case. I'd be worried. Bullying is the first thing that comes to my mind. I know how mean kids are, and I feel like I'd be terrified of where bullying might go with my kid. And I don't know that I'd be willing to let go of that fear. Like, I'd probably be extra paranoid. But my first thought is, I'd need to find someone who's in that position, who's willing to come on and talk to us. And given the email that, was sent to you from, I forget the name of the association, the Rhode Island Transgender Rights Association. I think I have that wrong.
It's the TGI network. It is
TGI network.
The Transgender, Gender Diverse, and Intersex network.
Yeah, if I'm more than welcome, and I'd be very curious just to hear about the parenting perspective of someone in that situation, because it's something I know nothing about. I would like to kind of hear what's different and how it changes, and the things they think about that I don't have to be honest. But at the same time, I mean, if they tell me that it's not a safe space to come on and talk to us on the podcast, that they don't feel safe here, and that it's an ally's job, that makes me kind of wonder what kind of person I'm going to get to come on here and talk. It just makes me feel like there's already a reluctance just to come talk about it. So I don't know. I'd be very curious. I love different perspectives, and I would love
to get that person on here also, because I mean, that was my issue with the email was, you know what? And again, I can't really speak for Tom. He's the ultra conservative between the two of us, obviously,
right.
like we talked about. But while I know I can be abrasive, like I think I've demonstrated, just because Tom is so good at just going, why, that, if I get caught saying something that turns out to be wrong, I'll admit it. Like, yeah, okay, you're right. Good point. I did not think about it that way. And I feel like we are the kind of people that you should be going for. Like, no, you really haven't thought about it, and here's exactly why. And a parent, a dad, or just even any parent I would, let me put it this way. My first blush is that as parents, we actually have a lot of the same problems. The bullying is just, okay, what is the bullying about, or what type of bullying it is? But we still both have to worry about bullying. So in a situation like that, I feel like I could absolutely be, proverbially suplexed and be like, no, you actually don't think about this one side of it. And I would have to interface with it because I'm a parent, a paranoid parent. So yeah, I would actually love to see that perspective come on, because I feel like that's most likely to really show my ass and show me exactly how wrong I am, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I really, applaud your willingness to engage in that dialogue. I think it's going to be the one thing that the tenor and tone of the last episode does is it, and also the title, it forces somebody to really have to engage with the material and look past like the kind of superficial, like somebody has to like really swallow their initial impressions. If there's somebody who really takes this issue seriously, has been following it, like really it's something that, is a major, it's created a lot of difficulties in their life. Like they like generally do not want to go and, again, like I said, like, kind of fight for their right to live the way that they want to live. And I've kind of had this perspective too, especially when a lot of, in 2020, a lot of social justice stuff was going down. And, I did not always want to be, black-splaining things to everybody all the time. It's fucking exhausting, man. It's exhausting. Like to always have to like be giving your perspective to like people who some may be willing to hear it. Some are just there to kind of smile and nod and then go back to what they were doing. Some of them may actually take it to heart. You don't actually know, what's going to happen. And some of them are going to attack you for it, and I have been attacked plenty over the past like 4 or 5 years. And, it builds up scar tissue, man. It builds up scar tissue when your identity is always under attack. And so like I do understand and empathize with them for not wanting to engage in that way. But we do need to we need to figure out ways to hear that side of the story. And one of the ways that we, if you have an episode or a podcast where like it just is so easy for people to misinterpret or potentially interpret correctly, based off your point of view, and think that, hey, these guys are, do not think that transgender people should have the same kind of rights as cisgender people, and they should be the targets of violence, and we should mention any hypothetical situation where they could potentially be the aggressor. It makes it really difficult to bring those kind of people in to have those kind of conversations that you want, And I think, Tom, when we first had this conversation, you said like, hey, this is, we value all people. This is the kind of podcast we want to talk about things, have real conversations. And I think I totally think you are being very, very, you're true about that. Like it's a true thought. Like you want to embody that. And so what I want to do is try to, help you all live up to that like a little bit. And so you can have those conversations, because if you turn people off, who could take part in it, then you might not ever get there.
Well, they wouldn't come into our arena. Would they accept us into theirs? Like, is it still essentially the same? Like they're bringing, they don't want to come here because it doesn't feel safe. But what if they have a podcast or something like that and they bring us on, and now, we're sort of the proverbial minority in that sense? Like, would they be willing to accept something like that?
I can't speak for them, but that sounds like a starting point.
Things. I mean, I think these conversations are great. Like I said, Irish a little bit, but it's just, in my mind, you don't have real change without some sort of confrontation. And there's been plenty, obviously, over the last, 5 and 10 years about this stuff. But I don't know. I feel like as far as confrontation goes, we're more approachable than at least half of the other podcasts out there for something like this. And the other half won't even touch this issue. So I don't know. It's just me. If we can get to go to their arena, I'd happily do that too.
And maybe even just having this recording and this podcast to say like, hey, this is a part of the ongoing conversations that we're having. You want to listen to, what we did.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what they'd want to do with it. So
I've got two thoughts on it. The first one is, well, I've got three thoughts. The very first one is, yes, let's set something up where we further the conversation, whether it's in their arena or ours or something altogether different. Maybe it's not even, having a discussion on a podcast. Maybe we just have a phone call and no one's on the spot and we're not recording them. Whatever makes people feel comfortable enough to have the conversation. It's not important that we have a conversation on a podcast or recorded. It's important that the conversation occurs, that context is understood, and that, enlightenment happens, that there's growth. That's the important thing, whether it's a part of the content, so to speak, or not. The second thought is, it's a little frustrating to me that, they said it's an ally's job to take this on and to talk to us about this. And I appreciate they're willing to lean on their allies. But again, if you're not willing to look past the headline and into the content before you tell me it's unsafe, that to me feels like a big part of the problem when people look at the trans community and say, no, I'm going to hold a bias. It's people not looking past the headline. It's people not looking past what they first see. If you're not willing to engage with the content, or you're not willing to engage with a person, then how genuine is anything that follows going to be? And what I worry about is, based on the way this sounds, they're going to look at the first headline. Whoever comes to talk to us will look at that first headline. And I understand, after you've kind of posed how they look at it, now take a defensive position and say, oh, these guys are being controversial, they're provoking. But if they're not going to engage with the content and dig a little deeper and see what we actually said, and see that what we actually mostly said was that, yeah, people who deal with this are real people too, and they have rights and they have value. And what we don't care for is when we see people who we think are exploiting loopholes and aren't really a part of this community, but are basically bad actors trying to take advantage of something. When they're not engaging with that, then any conversation we have, what's it going to be based on? Because if it's only based on a headline and it's not based on the content because they didn't engage with it, then we're not going to have that growth. There's no actual coming to understanding. It would be like us, talking about someone wearing a dress, or someone, cutting their hair a certain way, and instead of having the context and the talk about the person. So my fear about all this is, if they're not willing to look past the headline that's meant just to get interest and engage with the content, then how meaningful would the conversation be that follows? And that's my one reservation about this. I would just want them to listen to the episode first, so that when they come to talk to us, it's based on more than the headline. And if they have chief grievances within the episode, great, that's perfect. That's how we grow. But kind of based on the email that they sent to you and kind of what you said, I get the feeling that the headline is probably all a lot of people dealt with, especially since I got, like I said, over 100 messages before I got 75 downloads. That means that at least 25% of those people only engaged with the headline and never engaged with the content. They're judging a book by the cover. I mean, that's what this is. So I just want to make sure we can get someone who's willing to go a little bit deeper and engage on what counts. That's my chief concern.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little bit, frustrated with that response, just because, man, if you do something at the beginning of a conversation that people find deeply insulting, it's really hard to recover from that. Like, when you're talking about a sensitive conversation, we say, like, I really want to, like, saying, like, I really want to engage in conversation with you, but fuck you. Like you, it's like, I don't understand what that is. Like,
Can I use that? Can I use
that? I mean, like, people find the title, like, very deeply insulting, and like, you can argue that they shouldn't, that maybe that it was in jest, and that they shouldn't, but you all are living in a place of very different value systems than a lot of other people, and these two value systems are colliding here in a way that I feel like should be anticipated, but maybe wasn't. I'm gonna actually kind of compare it to a thing a news item that I wanted to bring in here, about JD Vance, the vice presidential candidate for Trump, and the way that he, a couple years ago, this is not something he said recently, this was something he said like a few years ago on Fox News, but he was talking about unmarried cat ladies, who don't have as much at stake as, people who have kids in this country. And it's like an example of the value systems that are, he has a very traditional conservative value system that highly values having children, and knows that that's like an extreme virtue in that value system. And with to kind of contrast with another thing you kind of talked about in that episode, your views on motherhood and how motherhood really is the defining characteristic of what a woman is, and going through that and the changes that you have. And there's so many people, and there's so many women in particular, who do not see motherhood as the defining characteristic of their womanhood. And they're two very different value systems. Like, no one can say that one of them is absolutely correct over the other, but they're going to be in intense conflict. And so women who hear why women are valued as mothers, and the things that they have to go through in the workplace, and to have careers in addition to running a household and all these other things. But there are so many other women who are like, that's not my womanhood. That's not my womanhood. That's just not it. And so, like, JD Vance saw that he's living in one completely different reality, and then once it hits like the media, then all those people who have a different value system are like, nah, bro, that ain't it. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of that going on here too.
Okay, so now my turn to be frustrated. Nope, Doug, I'm shushing you for a second, but I promise I'll unshush you quickly.
Wait, can I give the exact quote? Will that help you or hurt you?
Go ahead. If you've got it, go ahead, because I don't have any exact quotes. I wasn't prepared.
It makes him sound even worse than Lux made him sound. You ready?
Great.
Quote, a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. Close quote.
For the record, that's JD Vance's quote, not mine. Just let's be clear. That was not Tom. That was JD
Tom Vance.
Okay. Yes. His quote was awful and it was stupid. And I think it revealed a side of his character that he'd probably be better off for the world not knowing, since he's running for office.
Irish?
I dislike that quote, but that's not what I'm going to take issue with and be frustrated with. What I'm going to be frustrated with is what you mentioned with my quote. Because you said that I used motherhood as the defining characteristic of womanhood, and that is not what I did there. I said in that quote, when I was talking about that there were a number of things I watched my wife go through in life as a woman, and that journey of womanhood is what I use to sort of define what is a woman now. And yes, motherhood was a part of it. But there was a lot of other things I talked about growing up as a woman and a girl trying to compete against boys that are bigger than you and stronger than you in a world that I even said is patriarchal and has been for many time. It wasn't just having a child and being a mother that makes her a woman. That was taken way out of context just now. That was one of like 5 or 6 things I mentioned that helped me to see and to figure out, exactly what it is about my wife that makes her an amazing woman and what I think of as a woman. But it was one item of like 6. That's like saying, Tom likes Hawaiian pizzas, so Tom thinks that pineapple is a pizza. That's just that tiny little sliver of what I said. I feel like it was taken out of context because it was one of the things. But I didn't say that was the defining characteristic of a woman. I didn't say that's what makes a woman or what defines your gender or your sex. That's not it at all. It's more of the journey. I even mentioned what she goes through professionally and the challenges that she sees as a woman professionally in a male-dominated field. That was one of the many things I mentioned in there too. There are a lot of challenges that women go through that men do not go through, that we just don't understand. Maybe not necessarily to the extreme of, Doug wanting to follow you into a bathroom and drag you out by your hair. Maybe not that bad. But women go through a lot of challenges that we don't comprehend. And that is what I was referring to, the things that women go through that we don't. And that's why I don't feel that someone who hasn't gone through those challenges and those adversities in life can just all of a sudden say, you'll respect me as a woman. Because if you haven't gone through those trials and tribulations, you're never going to get the same kind of credit from me that my wife gets now that I've seen what she's gone through. That was my statement. And I don't want one piece of that being taken out of context, because it was just so far out of what I said, both the letter and the spirit of my message there.
You're right. I mean, the one thing I will push back a little bit on is that, yes, I also, when I talked, I did say, is also about professional accomplishments. So it's also about other things besides motherhood. But if you go back and listen to what you talked about in totality, you talked about motherhood much more than you talked about those other things. Like it was like a 4-to-1, like motherhood to everything else. And
sure.
So if your intent was to weigh everything equally, that's not the way it came out. You didn't say, and that was me kind of maybe doing a little bit of interpretive work there on what you said, but you did not seem to weigh them equally by the way that you presented it. And so I think there's a wide way that people could see it the way that I saw it or described it.
And that's fair. But in the moment too, remember that our podcast is through the lens of parents. So of course, what's going to draw most of my sort of in the moment attention and my immediate relevancy is going to be the things that are affecting me as a dad, which is my kids. So I probably did talk more about that than I did other things. But again, that's the filter of our podcast. You know, we have to look at things through that filter for what we are. And that's just kind of how we have to present this stuff. It's also, you know, some of those are sort of the items that no matter how well I try to empathize, no matter how much research I do and how many questions I ask, and no matter how hard I try, I can never further my understanding of what that process is like. Like that's the one thing I can never get past a certain point of understanding. And so in a lot of ways, that's the one that is the most dominant in my mind, I guess, when I'm trying to be like, wow, I'm really amazed here. I can't imagine what it's like to have that experience because my body's not designed to do that.
Okay, so you're both right. And I'll explain why.
You're on hush, Doug. Go ahead. Tell us what's up.
I was never officially shushed to begin with. I did not receive the certified letter, sir. You're both right. And here's why. So one of my little puzzle pieces is that each issue, you can judge it best either by being a completely removed third party without any personal experience or by being an actual person with the experience. And it does vary on the issue. I believe parenting-ish things are best judged by other parents. And easy for me to say being a parent, just to use a silly, just one-off story, when we were expecting our first child, my father pulled us aside and said, "This is fantastic. Congratulations. But I have to warn you, absolutely nothing changes your day-to-day life as much as having a child. Not getting married, not getting a new house, not getting new jobs. Even if you did all those things at once, nothing compares to having a new child." And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, Dad, I get it. New human, got it. And holy shit, was he fucking right. There was one point where our daughter was, I don't know, 3 or 4 months old, and she just had a night where she was not going to sleep. And it's like 1:30 in the morning, and I'm downstairs with a bottle in hand, and I legitimately had this thought of like, oh my God, she's never going to sleep. I'm never going to sleep. I'm going to die. And this is because this is going to go on for another 18 years. And you're like, it's sleep deprived, and you've never gone through this before, and you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know what the diaper rash is from, and you're trying what you think is everything to get this kid to sleep, and you just are so helpless. And you think you've done school, you've done a job, you got married, like, fuck, like I found someone who was going to marry me, who I thought was actually kind of cool. Like I've done all these great things. We got a house, everything. And you are just completely helpless in that moment. And now that we have had our third, I thought I respected my wife before, like when we were dating and then engaged and married. I had absolutely zero idea the kind of person that I married. When I think about her now, I first think about just how amazing of a mother she is. And that is a part of her identity to me. It is astounding what ladies go through just in one pregnancy, much less 2 or 3. I mean, they say every pregnancy is different. Every pregnancy is completely different, at least for us so far. And it's not a slight against somebody who hasn't had a child. It's just you just can't understand it until you've seen it. You just can't. It's more than just impressive. And so like I said, you're both right. It doesn't make you any less of a human to not have a kid, but boy, it's an experience you just can't speak on if you haven't done it. And I feel like saying that as the father who wasn't carrying the child, I feel like that speaks volumes that I'm like, yeah, no, no way. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
I think what we can all agree on, though, is that JD Vance is an asshat, or at least that statement makes him sound like an asshat, right? I mean,
if I want to be a devil's advocate just because I love doing that on his behalf real quick, I mean, Buttigieg they didn't have any adopted kids yet when he said that. So, it checked out. Childless.
It doesn't matter. It was a condescending statement to what he said. I think goes much closer to what Big Lux was trying to say right there. I feel like JD Vance's comment really does minimize women who haven't had kids.
That's othering. That's actually othering.
Yes.
And unfortunately, this is a common political trope. You bet he got his clicks for that, and he's probably if he's one of those believers of all PR is good PR, then this is paying dividends for him right now.
Well, the far right's going to rally to his defense, right? The far right is going to love this, and they're going to eat it up, and they're going to praise him, and they're going to defend him, and that's what we're going to see. Like, that's what it is. And you have idiots like me coming out with the etymology of the cat lady and then talking about how it goes back to, the 1600s and telling you really, actually older than that, it goes back to Egypt. But you'll have some nerd like me who wants to give you the whole etymology, and they're like, shut up, America, we're voting for him. Like, that's what it's going to end up being. That's going to be
but the reason you can tell it's so incendiary, if you just flipped it and I don't know, let's just use a random example. Like someone like Pelosi or Elizabeth Warren said something like, all those white cisgender breeder men want to just tell us they want to do all their policy around their families, around their kids, and they don't respect anybody else who's trying to advance society without like the extra weight of children. And we'd all be like, rah, kind of thing. So, I mean, it's just, that's how you know it's bad.
Can I just say that if on the aptitude test we took at high school, if something had come up like, hey, you're best suited to be a white cisgender breeder man, I would have been through the roof. Like, that would have sounded great to me. Sign me up.
Well, you did already. You did sign up, though.
Well, yeah, but I'm not. It's not a profession. It's a hobby. We'll call that a hobby, a devotion. I guess.
Oh, so being married is a hobby.
Oh God!
I'm telling your wife.
Looking for trouble. Looking for trouble. Looking for trouble. I think I appreciate. Thank you for the perspective on it. On what you all thought in approaching this episode and approaching this subject. I guess I just had like one or two just quick hits for things. I don't know, like maybe to avoid in the future. Y'all debatable. It's your show. You can do, obviously, clearly you can do whatever you want. But things that I just don't think help further the conversation. One of them was the quote, Tom, that you had, that comparing the supporters of the transgender movement to Nazis because they were, because they were quote, like coming for you.
Doug looks confused. It was the poem. I said that we're essentially losing a lot of ground, and this is happening and this is happening, and it feels like the poem is what I said, where they came for the Jews, and
first they came for so and so, and then they came. I didn't say anything, and then they came for me, and there's no one left to defend me. It was that poem I was talking about. Yeah, sorry, Lux, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's good context. I don't see, nobody is, some people, you can say like certain people are getting like canceled for it, like somebody like Dave Chappelle will take, for example, over him putting transgender jokes in his comedy. Dave Chappelle is fine. He's doing just fine, and he's going to be good. I just don't see people come, like when you say like coming for you, like I think of the actual very real violence that is happening, in which direction it's actually flowing in on this topic, and so that to me, it just that quote was just seemed a little bit hyperbolic, more than a little bit hyperbolic.
I totally understand that. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yep.
And so when you want to engage with people on the topic, like that's not going to be a helpful case to say like we're approaching this in a thoughtful way. Also, Doug, I know you had brought up the shooting that was perpetrated by one transgender individual for sure, which is a fact. Which is a fact.
The St. Paul thing.
The St. Paul, yeah. But at the same time, again, it's just there is not a transgender mass shooting problem. Like these things are like these are, mentioning the gender of a person in that context is not helpful because it leads people to believe that there's more violence that the transgender community is doing versus the cisgender community, and which is absolutely not true. By far, we are doing all of the shooting. Like that is facts. So like it just when you highlight a case like that, it could definitely lead a lot of people to be like, okay, so they want to sensationalize this a little bit. And there are going to be people who hear that and say, oh yeah, oh man, transgender people with guns, man, they are not stable. They're not mentally well. And it's even a more important point because it actually ties to something else you said, Tom, like about the DSM and about gender dysphoria being a part of the DSM, which is also true.
Ooh, this is a good point. I like it.
However, gender dysphoria is like not every transgender person has gender dysphoria. It's like it is not tied to mental illness in the fact that a transgender person is going to be more likely to shoot up a school or anything like that. Not that you did not make that comparison directly. I want to make that clear. You did not make that comparison, but just having the two topics, having the
this is going to be a hell of a first impression.
Having the two topics next to each other when you're talking about them, though, like and not making that clarification yourselves, like you put a lot of these topics kind of back to back, and somebody who is listening to this like is going to make the conclusion that you're seeing a connection in places where you don't say that there is a connection. And you talk about transgender shootings, talk about mental illness, you talk about transgender people or men in dresses potentially doing things to your children yes.
Sundress
in the sundress in the bathroom. Like you when you go through these topic from topic to topic like this, people are going to draw connections. Like you have to be really intentional, I think, when you talk about some of these things. So good point. I should have clarified more of what was actually in my brain head on that particular incident. What you were getting at with the DSM and gender dysphoria and all that is a really good point, because there is I think there's logically a very easy step to connect gender dysphoria with any transgender person and red flag laws. I think there's absolutely a way to say, oh, well, this person is transgender, therefore they have gender dysphoria, therefore they're not allowed to own a firearm, therefore they're now defenseless, therefore Second Amendment rights, la, 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 la. And now you're forcing someone else to come back around and basically prove that no, in this particular case, they don't have it, and it could be a total shit show. Great point. My real issue with the St. Paul shooting was that yes, I like how you said we are doing more of the shootings, and I assume you just meant non-transgender folk in general. Cisgender people.
Cisgender people.
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's how I took it too.
I've been trying to play nice. I really don't like the cis thing. It feels like an othering of sorts the other way. Why just call me a man? A men. I'm just a men. I'm not a cisgender men. I'm just a man. It's fine. Like that's it. That's what everyone's going for anyway, right? You don't even want to be called trans. You just want to be called a man or a woman, whatever you identify with, right? Stop calling me cis.
Let's drop them all. Let's do it.
I mean, yeah, and then we'll really see what happens. Jesus. But they did not, the mysterious Illuminati, lizard people, government, whoever I'm talking about when I say they, we did not get to see any of the manifesto. It sounded like there was some sort of manifesto from this shooter, and we didn't see a lick of it. And so, yes, people will think we're making connections, but give us a reason to not make that connection. For me, if that manifesto actually said basically like fuck cisgendered people, yeah, now there absolutely is a connection to make, because that perpetrator made the connection. When you're omitting that from me, I'm kind of forced to at least make my own presuppositions. I wanted to see that manifesto, especially if it didn't have anything to do with being trans versus not. I was pissed that we didn't get to see that because that's basically leaving data out of the equation for us to figure out what's going on. And yes, um, I guess we'll say cis people, non-trans people are committing more of mass shootings, but that's a quantity thing. If we're going by just ratios, there is a certain percentage now of trans people who have done shootings. It's just a fact. I'm not trying to like say one way or another, but if you have trans people committing shootings, they're committing shootings too. And if you do a ratios perspective, you have to clarify if you're talking about total number versus like a per capita or total ratio thing. For me, if a trans person does do something violent like this, I absolutely want to hear the motives behind it because in my mind, that's going to be your best chance to clear those motives from being related to trans or not issues. Most people are going to draw that connection whether you like it or not. A trans person does something violent, someone's going to say, oh, look, trans people are violent. No, you need to release some evidence that shows they're not. It had nothing to do with being trans.
I am saying that I absolutely disagree with that statement because whether you are trans or cisgender, a person is a person, and the motivations that a person has are going to be very unique to that person, and not as a class of people. I'm not trying to say all white, or I need to know the motivation of every white man that commits a
three white guys did it. Well, I mean, how many serial killers are white dudes? Between 30 and 55. Like, I mean, we already draw that conclusion. Like, come on. So,
I think there are some times where it is important to make distinction. You got the Dylan Roofs of the world. You got people who are just out to do hate crimes. That is.
Are you saying basically you're against all manifestos ever being released, like no matter who it is? I mean, I'm serious. Like, this is a real question. Like, are you just saying you don't like manifestos being released, period, in situations like this because just in general it castigates groups, or it casts general broad brushes over groups? I mean, I think qualification. Anybody who does something like this, as far as I'm concerned, is some level of like lunatic. I don't care what else you are. Someone who goes to a school and tries to shoot children, you're a lunatic. We don't need you. Just in general, that's my broad brush. But I mean, I'm just pro manifesto releasing in general because in my mind that can help us maybe catch some of these before they happen. But if you're just anti-manifesto releasing all the way, then that's the issue. Like that, I get that.
Yeah, and I think I do lean on that side. I think I am anti-manifesto in general because I think we can kind of see from the facts on the ground who they wanted to kill, because that's what they did. Also, I'm up against glorifying these people who do these acts. Like, I mean, once the manifesto is people, just copycats. There are people who glorify that, and also I feel like we're also a little far. We got a little bit off topic, so I'm not.
Welcome to the Two Dads Talking podcast. This is what happens.
We do this every single week. Well, but I mean, good point. Like, well, okay, so like the St. Paul, shooter killed a lot of non-trans people, but also by definition, most of the people in the world are non-trans. So, and this is probably just something we'll never quite meet on. Is that so? You're saying manifesto release bad because motivates other people to get fame, copycats, and just and yes, there are plenty of people who will just take this and run with it no matter what that manifesto says. They'll claim anything, whatever they want to make their point. And I'm just on the other camp, which says there are going to be shitty people anyway. So for the rest of us who actually give a shit and are trying to actually like stop this from happening in the future, I'm one of those like I need all the information I can get kind of personalities, and so that's why I'm pro manifesto release. But I do at least understand not wanting any of those released ever, especially when it is a group that represents such a small portion of the population, because per capita, if you have even just one, that feels like a bigger ratio to other people who are not trying to take the nuance of it. So I think that's maybe what you're trying to get at, really.
Yeah, I mean, I
Sort
think
of.
that's close. That's close. And I, appreciate you kind of maybe meeting me halfway on it. I just, yeah, it's fine. Law enforcement has it. They can take it and they can and do with it and figure out best practices to make it happen, and it kind of trickles down into the population that way.
I mean, I hope so. But that Sandy, what was it? The Nick guy who did the Sandy
Sandy
Hook
Hook.
shooting? Was
Yeah.
that he was reported to the FBI like 5 times and they did nothing. And like, so I don't even, that's what part of the reason why I want this stuff to be public, because I feel like sometimes even our law enforcement just doesn't, they drop the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're human
I'll
too.
chip in since I've got
So
I guess a foot in those
what would you know
waters.
about police officers?
Right. First, I want to take my turn putting words into Big Lux's mouth to make sure I understood what he was saying, and that's that the manifesto, in this case, and I'm not going to say in all cases, but what he was specifically referring to here, the manifesto being released might cause people to assume that this is sort of a commonly espoused position that the shooter had that all trans people have, when that's not the case. That this guy's individual motivations might then be sort of automatically allocated to an entire community of people, and that's bad. We don't want that. Am I close to?
Yeah, I think that's close.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So I that makes sense to me. I understand that. I agree with it. What I will say, as far as releasing the manifesto goes, police work far too often is reactive and happens after a bad thing happens, and it's minimizing the damage and punishing someone who did something, but it doesn't prevent a crime from happening all the time. You need community involvement and community policing in order to prevent these things from happening in the first place. If you don't have an aware community and a relationship between the community and the officers that are policing it, then all you're ever doing is reacting to atrocities and reacting to crimes. If you ever want a community or a society where these crimes get prevented before they happen, then stuff like this probably does need to be shared in some way. And maybe it's shared with the caveat, look, this is a personal agenda of this person's, but in some way, the community needs to be aware of what was going on so that they can look for flags for the next time and prevent the next atrocity. If you don't have that relationship, then all you're ever doing as a law enforcement agency is showing up after bodies are dropped. And while it is a good thing to minimize the damage and punish people who did it, again, going back to a paranoid parenting position, I would give the world to have someone be able to prevent the school shooting before it happens, instead of standing in a courtroom and rooting for someone to get the death chair when they convict him. Like, those two worlds are so vastly different that you have to have that sort of community involvement and awareness if you're going to prevent those things in the first place. And yeah, at the end of the day, I want to prevent the atrocities from happening instead of just policing them after the fact. And that's all I've got to say on the subject.
So what I think Lux is saying, though, is he says, okay, let's pretend we do this. How do we stop, to use a very real example, those guys chasing that jogger into a construction site and gunning him down? How do you stop the couple of crazies, jackasses who say, oh, look, it's a trans person, they're probably going to do a shooting too, let's get them? And like, no. How do you stop that before it happens too? So I think everyone put words in Lux's mouth. Like, I think what you're saying is that how do you stop that from happening? If you release stuff like this, you have to have the counter plan, if you will, already in place before you're on board with something like that, really, right?
Yeah, I think that's like both of you all are definitely getting these points. And again, honestly, like, this is not a topic really that I had planned on talking about, or that I've really put very
Welcome
much
to Two Dads Talking,
that
like
I've really
Tom
put much thought into. I'm definitely more on just like, how do we talk about people who do bad things? Like, what is the point of including somebody's gender or including somebody's race in like a news report, or including somebody's age in a news report or whatever? Like, it helps people draw like a picture of that person, but at the same time, it can also lead to outcomes where, like, just like you were talking, Doug, like where people just hear about certain kinds of people who are doing certain kinds of crimes or doing crimes more frequently, they think, because that's just the way that it's reported. And so that's the situation that I want to avoid. and manifestos. I'm sure somebody has a better answer than me on.
I
So
mean, we're humans. We misuse everything. Like, I can't wait to see, like we talked about with AI. I can't wait to see how we misuse AI and water down AI. It's going to be fantastic. But I don't know. I'm one of those like it's a feature, not a bug kind of people. Like we're human. We're going to misuse and misinterpret and mess stuff up anyway. So for the few of us that actually give a shit, like we need all the help we can get, and that's why I'm on that side of the fence. But I can't also I can't really have my claim without at least listening to the other side. So I get why it's not being released too at the same time. What we really need are responsible people. It sounds like you in positions like yours, and we just need to do that across the entire country because that will totally happen. That's how politics works all the time.
totally,
Yeah.
we got nothing but 7 responsible people who have never committed any crime. I think we have.
We need to look up JD Vance with Cat
I
Ladies
haven't
Anonymous.
shared with Doug the stories that went viral of your fellow councilman Lux. He's unaware of that story, so that's one that we'll need to share at some point. Maybe not tonight, maybe not on the recording, but
we had our own little local city council scandal happening too, and I mean it's a little bit petty, but it was like, wow, you guys kind of messed up, and I can't really say much more than that, I think, because I'm on an advisory board myself. So good talk.
Oh, that sucks. I can see. That's one good thing about it being an elected official is that like you can just like say literally anything you want. It's ridiculous. We have 7 council members, and I think between the 7 of us, there have been like 8, the combination of 8 arrests and restraining orders. One person had probably 4 of them, but they've all been expunged.
My hometown is gangster, Doug.
Expunged just means never even happened.
Yeah. So people don't know. People don't know, except for the fact that a woman comes to literally every single meeting and accuses him of raping her. Except for that, So, like this is Westerly politics, baby. Here we go.
And you know what might be fun? If we can line up a Monday evening where we can do a live stream reaction video, we could do the council meeting and you and I could do a reaction video to that. Like we could stream that, and that would be I think we should do that. We need to find a Monday that we can free up and make that work.
Oh my God. The craziest one right now, we're supposed to be having a trial of Robert Lombardo, the guy who gave the middle finger and was like doing the jerk off motion on the dais, like during a meeting on TV.
While it was televised, Doug. While it was televised.
Wait, but did he only give the middle finger and do a jerk off motion?
So he's also threatened pretty much everybody in the town of Westerly.
Okay, well that's fine. I mean, that feels like more actionable. I was going to say, is there any law against lewd gestures though?
Lewd and lascivious behavior in public? Yes, there are laws against that. Yes,
but it's more. That's just.
If you see it as he does it, you'll understand.
Oh, okay.
It's worse than it sounds.
Was he like that skit where he like does it real slow with a weird face, and it wasn't just like quick like fuck you? It was.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is like I was in support of like the censure motion at first, and then we started to think about it, and I was just like, we spend so much fucking time on this bullshit. We're not solving the town's problems, and it doesn't mean anything. And yes, you're right. The middle finger and jerk up, that stuff is not illegal. Threatening people
threats are, clearly.
But he is like very Trump-like in that he just knows how to just be just hard enough to understand, or just like he just understands how to use language in a way that is not like exculpatory. Like he's not gonna get hit with it. He's also a lawyer, so he knows how to like not get hit with any of this stuff. And so all these people want to come at him with things, and I'm like, bro, like just vote him out. That is the power that you have. Or if you call it a recall, if it's that serious, to do a recall. Like that's the way. Those are the 2 tools you have. Like all the rest of the BS that we're doing is just wasting time. Like come on. So
sounds fun.
It's like, okay, we have a beach that's eroding. We have like sewer systems that are like cost $100 million to fix. Whatever. We're trying to take out a dam. Fuck it all. It's like,
but people don't care about that though. But the moment you put in a special assessment for the sewers, people are like, whoa, hold on a second here.
Yeah.
Just do my neighborhood. It's fine.
As long as you're not doing it for a golf course, because they're supposed to make their own money and pay for everything themselves. Even if it's a public course, like they're just supposed to do everything themselves.
Mhm.
They make plenty of money, right? Isn't that the position?
That's part of it. That's part of it. Oh my God. I don't want to talk about golf courses in this
No,
town.
let's not talk about politics and get him in trouble on here. Let's move back on, because I know we've got some other stuff we want to talk about. And these professional musicians, they're used to early bedtimes. They're not used to being up this late. So I want to make sure we're keeping him in his prime mental mode here, and we're not keeping him up too late.
I feel like this is like one of my most recent brushes with greatness, and I'm like yelling at it.
Oh, now he's an it. Oh boy, now you're othering Big Lux.
The brush with greatness.
My God.
The brush with greatness.
Believe me, like I have my own personal trolls, man. Like this is y'all got the soft touch. I feel like I've been massaged very lightly, and
I was thinking about this issue in the shower this morning. So
wow, I want to carry this conversation no further forward. It's you in the shower, not interested. Sorry.
You can log off then, Tom. See you later.
Brush with greatness just took a whole new meaning. So,
and on that note, we've reached the climax of this podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, you win. Lux wins.
Yeah. That was the mic drop.
That was it. That was absolutely it. Oh my God. That's our title.
No, that is not our. Yeah, that's probably right. No. Gosh, what are we going to call this one? Yeah, that's a great
brush
point.
with greatness just took on a whole new meaning.
Well, that is a great title for like any other time that this would have come up. That would have been great. But I feel like this has to be a little bit more topic focused, because part of the big point here was that our original title was
what is a woman? JKLOL.
It's going to turn people off. So we need to make sure that this one is, if we're going to take the point, if we're going to take the greater meaning, then this one needs to be a warmer handshake than what the first one was.
Why be the responsible adult?
I don't know. I guess because I'm tired. This is what happens when I get tired. I start becoming responsible and all that nonsense.
Fine.
All right. I'm sure there's something else that we need to move on to here instead of your shower brush with greatness. Lux, take us either in summation of our last point, if you can remember what it was, or walk us further down the path. You've got the torch. You got the baton.
Appreciate it. Oh my God. So I think, we talked a lot about, we talked about the title. We talked about some of the specific points that were made. I think we even talked a little bit about the tone. I want this podcast to be successful. I want both of you all to be wildly successful. If you're looking for sponsorship, I hope you find it. If you're looking to sponsor other things, I hope you find it. You do that, like say the Next Up Festival, which
is that coming up soon? Can you tell me a little bit more about that before we go on? What is that?
Yeah. So in our little town of Westerly, Rhode Island, we have a fantastic park in the middle of an arboretum, if you will.
Part of the historic registry, isn't it? The National Historic Registry?
National Historic Site. It's a beautiful park, and it is probably underused. They would say underutilized for events. And one of the reasons why is because it's really difficult to it's not public land, it's privately held land, so they can really kind of control the strings. So actually, even taking a step back from that, like a few years ago, me and Tom, we did the album release party at a literal castle, a town over from Westerly. And it was like an event trying to figure out the logistics and get people and ticketing. And in the end, we probably didn't quite break even on it, but it was like just a cool experience to have. And so we were like, it kind of got us thinking about festivals and places and locations, what we could do. And we were planning to do the same kind of thing the very next year at the same location. But then the owner was like, it started to feel like it got too big. And the owner, I think, got a little bit freaked out about it. And so we pivoted and we decided to have it in the park. And because it was going to be a little bit more of a public location, we wouldn't be able to sell tickets. We were thinking, all right, what is the draw? What we can do that's going to really benefit the town and make a great show? Realized there were a lot of young artists that were just not getting a platform. It's just really hard to break into the music industry in our town. And so we're like, hey, let's give them a platform. Let's have a great show. Let's invite everybody to see if we can get some sponsorship, and let's do it. We did not get We did not get sponsorship. I ended up paying like pretty much for that entire first version of the festival. But it was great. It was fun. It rained like halfway through. People stayed through the rain. I was like, that's how you know a festival is working. People stayed through the rain. And so we're like, okay, we got something here. Let's do this again. And so we did it last year. We got a little bit more sponsorship from some nonprofits, Library and United Theater, downtown Westerly. And we did it again. We did bigger, better. And so this is going to be our third year. We have some experience. We finally, got some corporate sponsorship. We've got some legitimacy. We've got the National Guard is kind of a big partner in this. They've got one of the bands is playing, and they're going to have a rock climbing wall. We have a lot of great local artists, and it's just going to be a total vibe. And the community is really buying into it. And we just feel really, really grateful. It's going to be in September 14th. Anybody happens to be in the Westerly area, Westerly, Rhode Island, or Eastern Connecticut, this ain't that far. We're going to be there from 2 to 9 p.m. Great acts all day. And Tom is really doing a ton of the legwork to make it happen. I could not be more grateful to have him on the team for that. And I'm going to be the headlining performer. So, it's how we do.
It's gonna be a hell of a good time. It really come out. It's gonna be family friendly. We've got it. There's so much going on. It's if you happen to be from Ohio and you're in the area the weekend of September 14th, Doug, I highly recommend you come by and check that out.
Yeah, I gotta see because we got the other stuff going on. I don't think the official itinerary or whatever is out yet, so I have to see what's going on with that. But yeah.
Well, aside from that plug, man, it's funny how that happened. Gosh, what a strange little coincidence.
Such a coincidence. I mean, who would have thought that would even come up?
Seriously, right? Who would have thought?
No.
Where are we going on this journey
Stop
next,
it.
Big Lux?
Yeah, I think I guess the wider, just taking a step back, and non-topic specific to what we've been talking about the whole time is, making sure that, and I really want to make sure that I do more of this myself, because I probably haven't been great about it when I've in some of the media that I've done, is just like really, really putting some effort in separating, opinion from fact. And when you say like, hey, look, this is how we feel about this really big, important topic. This is our perspective. And we understand that there are other perspectives out there. We understand that like they may even like be vehemently disagree with us based off of X, Y, and Z. But we want to make sure that that we're kind of standing on our own. This is what it is. Like if we want it to be just conversational and just talk through it, we just want to make sure that people know that that's what it is, and we're not assuming that this is, you're not assuming your listeners know exactly what you are presenting to them, because some people will listen to it and say like, oh, these guys think that they've done like all of the research, they know everything, and they're providing a comprehensive answer on whatever subject it is, when that that's not what you're doing here, and you're having a very different kind of conversation. Sometimes you just have to like lay that out for people, because otherwise they might expect something different, especially when you come to like a super controversial topic like women's rights or transgender rights or things like that. Like, I'm heading into my second year of law school. So I do not want to ever sound like I am giving legal advice until 2 years from now, when I, God willing, pass the bar and actually start practicing. But I think if you were my client, that's kind of the advice that I would give to help you kind of shape what you're doing here, and really set expectations and really set yourself up for people really being able to receive what you're saying. And then maybe the second thing that one of the things I really have been learning, I think, a lot in school, and I've seen in practice now, is that lawyers, really good lawyers, are very good at respecting another person's argument and accepting it, and being able to really clearly articulate it, and then really articulate their defense. And I would love to see more of that, more of articulation of the other side of an argument. If you were going to do more topical things like this, and really showing that you have like an understanding of that side of the argument, and then really presenting like why you in your identity and the way that you move through life, why you see things differently, while still being like very respectful of that. And I think you do some of that, and you're definitely trending that way. I think it's something that you can lean into. I think though both of those two things, again, just my opinion, and again, I got to frame it like the way I'd like you all to frame it. just my opinion, not based on any scientific fact at all. I just think those things make for an experience that people know what they're going to get, and helps dispel some of the potential friction that might come from it.
Cool.
Doug, you
Sorry, I was gonna say, we're just like, thanks.
I mean, like,
we were just sitting there like, okay.
Just like,
I've been trying to defer and let you speak first, unless it's something
it's
that
fine.
really
I was
has to
sitting
do
there
with me,
thinking,
because
I was going to make a
all
joke
the time anyway.
I was going to make a joke about like, well, now then you'll have two lawyers in the town council meetings, and it'll just be really interesting to see what you partake in then. No, you're right. We do that sometimes, but as usual, we could probably always be better about it, and just you can always be a little bit more clear. It's virtually impossible to be 100% clear on everything, so we can keep that in mind.
I think it's going to have to be something that we pay attention to, like this, on topics that have more
Say like Alabama
stake.
IVF. I tried to be the other side.
Gosh, I had so much fun letting loose on you in that one. So the general tone of our podcast, like our brand and our tone and what it is, everything we talk about is generally an informal conversation. It's a lot of off the cuff responses, and it's storytelling, and it's how we're seeing things. And that's just kind of how we are, and that's who we're going to be. And that part's probably not going to change much. We don't generally do much research, but I think what we can do better is that when we're talking about an issue that you've kind of pointed out, hey, look, there are stakes involved for people on this topic. Like, this is not a normal topic. This isn't just a bar topic. This is a topic where there are risks and people have things at stake that may not be prevalent in all of your normal conversations. If we can do a better job of kind of picking out which ones those are, that's where we probably do need to put more effort into, as you said, hey, look, this is our opinion. We do a little more research and more careful. I don't think we're going to be able to do that for every episode, frankly, just because we wouldn't have the time for that. But I think if we can identify the ones that are more, you use the word with friction. I think I like the one where the stakes are higher. I think I like that terminology. I think if we can identify the topics with higher stakes, higher human stakes, then that's probably where we do need to be a little bit more careful about how we're presenting it, how we're approaching it, and how we handle it. And then how I tell everybody that Doug's wrong when he's wrong. Like, I have to be more gentle about that, apparently.
It's okay. I mean, Donatello was not number one on any article that I found. So, you
of course not.
You can
You're
live
reading
with that.
articles based on Leonardo fans. Like, the IQ quotient on
I
those
said
is like his shoe
TMNT,
size.
top turtle. I was looking at best TMNT characters. I didn't see one where Donatello was number one. I'm sorry, man. I mean, I saw one where Raphael was number one, but there was no Michelangelo and there was no Donatello. I checked 5.
Raphael forever, bro. Raphael forever.
You would.
That's where Bridget is too. Yeah.
I was going to say, no, this is where we're going to really get upset with each other.
I respect Raphael. He's my number 2. I like Raphael.
And the
But
only person
Donnie's
who
the
can
only one that's got 2 different skills he brings to the table.
Who's
He's
the only
one.
person that can rein in Raphael?
Splinter. Leo has
that too.
demonstrated he cannot.
Let's stop.
rein in
No,
Raphael.
stop it. Stop doing the whole. Oh, yeah. Oh, we're talking about only the 4 turtles, but then my name is Tom and I'm going to bring in Splinter every freaking time I can. No, only the 4 turtles. Leonardo's the only one who reins him in.
Leonardo's
Mikey,
the one that sets him off in like every opportunity.
That too, yeah, and has Mikey ever reined in Raphael? And Donatello's always like, yeah, I'm just going to go tinker over here. You guys figure that out. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm just going to solve the actual problems while you guys deal with your emotions. That's fine.
Yeah, and then he's sitting there going, hey guys, are we going to go? Because he's not the leader. Son of a bitch.
Is there any argument for,
really be upset with
for Casey Jones? I'm just saying, like,
not as a turtle, I don't think, but as a favorite, sure. Yes, I love me some Casey Jones. He never got April O'Neil in the comics, did he? Like, I know he doesn't in the movies. He never really seals the deal, but I always felt like they should have finished that off, and they should have been an item out by the end. Yeah.
Unintended.
Actually, it wasn't even intended, but hey, I'll take it by accident.
Pun intended.
Yep, there we go. All right.
So, I mean, I'm just saying that's all I have to say on the topic. So I just wanted to make sure that that you all didn't have looking at me for anything else. Like I really appreciate you all being open to some hopefully constructive criticism, and I like the fact that we got to have this talk. We're still friends at the end of it, and I think that's a good example to set for the world as we hit these really, really thorny topics that are really, really affecting people's lives. So appreciate y'all.
You
for
are my
having
absolute favorite new acquaintance.
You are his brush with greatness. Let's not forget that.
In the shower.
Oh no!
I said not at the same time. I don't know why this is so hard for people to figure out. Stick around for my dad joke, Lux. You'll like it.
All right.
Dad jokes?
Do you want to stay for the dad jokes, or do you just want to run
I can
away?
tell mine right now. It has nothing to do with showers. I realize what that sounds like, but it has nothing to do with showers. You'll like it.
All right, go ahead.
There's no guessing. It's really just a punchline. And for the record, I want to be extra proud of myself this time because this is entirely from my own brain. Are you ready for it?
Okay.
Did you know that J.D. Vance used funds from a furniture store for his campaign? Yeah, he decided to make the Sofa King political. Think about it.
Okay. It's taking me a little too long to get there, but
Sofa King.
I got it.
You got it? Okay,
yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I'm there with you. That's an internal chuckle.
Yes. Which is no chuckle. That's insulting. I spent a lot of time on this, at least 3 minutes.
Is that longer than you spent in the shower, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Pun intended.
Is this the point where I'm supposed to slap my knee and go,
No, you're not from you're not from the Midwest. You do not get to knee slap, sir.
My bad.
I will fight this until I die. If you are only the Midwesterners are allowed to go, well, time to head out. Get knee slapped if you're not from the Midwest. Get out of here.
I will gladly give that to y'all. Y'all can keep it. Y'all can keep it. I was only doing an ironic knee slap anyway.
All right.
You're my second favorite acquaintance now.
My dad joke is worse than Doug's.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
terrible. The writer in me couldn't help himself. What's the difference between a cat and a comma? A cat has claws at the end of paws, and a comma is a pause at the end of a clause.
You're gonna have to say that slower. Tomas, slow that down.
A cat has claws at the end of pause, while a comma is a pause
at the end of a clause. Yeah, I know. You just said it too fast.
All right.
That is worse than mine.
I told you it was worse than yours.
I know, but I didn't believe you.
I almost went with the cat bowl one, where my wife asked me if I had seen the cat bowl, and I said I didn't know she could pick up the ball. I almost went with that one.
Yeah. That's strike one.
All right. I think that's all we've got. It's we're a little over 2 hours in, so this may go down as our longest. As sort of an epilogue here, this is also why we can't be perfect in our podcasts, because we don't start recording until 9:00 at night when we're already tired from the day, and it drags on, and we wax, silly and get way off the beaten path. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, Big Lux. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Tomas, thank you for editing out all the times that I said his actual name instead of Big Lux in advance. Thank you for the tomato moments. We appreciate you for that. And and anyone want to say anything else before we punch out of here?
I really don't want our listeners to know our safe word. That's supposed to be between us.
All right. Thank you guys very much. We'll probably have a chapter 3 with this discussion at some point with someone else. There's been some interesting paths being laid here, but thank you. You can find our guest at bigluxviolin.com. Find him on the social media channels. You know where you can find us. Take a look at our Patreon. Take a look at our website. Share us with a friend and talk nice to your neighbors about us. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it. Lux, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you giving us literally 2 hours of the end of your day. We really appreciate it, man.
Very much appreciated. Thanks, Lux.
Thanks for having me.